I don't support Black Lives Matter. I have a lot of personal issues with Black Lives Matter. Personally, I think that Black Lives Matter is a movement that is both morally and ideologically reprehensible. Now, if you disagree with me, that is okay, but just please hear me out before you judge. Now, let me just say right away that I'm not in favor of all lives matter. I think that this whole bickering is only creating more division, which is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to accomplish. Yes, I agree with the statement that Black Lives Matter, and yes, for the most part, I agree with the statement that all lives matter. I'm saying for the most part because if you're a child molester, then please just fuck off and die. Thank you. However, agreeing with a statement is not equivalent to supporting a movement. And as for all lives matter, it's not even a movement, it's a reaction to a movement. And from my experience, almost everyone who screams all lives matter sounds something like this. But what about me? Yo, I ain't black, but I want to feel included. I want to play with the cool kids. The other day, the cop gave me like a $200 fine. You know, that shit really hurts. You see, I view the whole Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter dispute as nothing more than two kids fighting over a broken toy, and I don't fuck with that shit. So instead, I would rather focus on socio-economic and political/ideological reasons as for why I don't support the movement. Yes, I will admit that African Americans are facing certain challenges that are unique to their group. Yes, I will admit that discrimination and racism are absolutely real. And yes, I will admit that due to the history of black people in America, they face certain disadvantages that white people on average don't face. However, I also think that the media is blowing things out of proportions whenever racism is concerned. You have to remember that we as a society have become more tolerant and accepting than we have ever been. And by creating this scenario which claims that white people are so racist and intolerant, the system is racist, it's very regressive and really undermines all the years of progress we have made as a society. I don't think that most white people in America are racist. I don't think that most white people are racist, period. I will admit that some cops are racially biased. I perfectly understand why black people don't feel safe around cops. However, we should also realize that not every single time when a white cop kills a black person is the whole incident being racially motivated. A lot of the crime being committed in the States is done by black males. Keep in mind that black people form only approximately 13% of the entire population of the United States of America. Now, let's take a look at the statistics, shall we? As you can see, there are many more white people who are being arrested each year compared to black people. However, if you look at the specific offences like murder or robbery, there are more black people than white people committing those, despite making up a relatively small percentage of the population. Now, I don't know, maybe white people are just much better at getting away with crime. There's a reason why Michael Jackson became white, so he could fondle little kids in peace. Now, black people commit a high percentage of violent offences. Therefore, it is reasonable to assume that some of those individuals are going to be killed by the cops, especially in situations where they won't drop the weapon or they won't resist. Does that excuse police brutality that is racially motivated or unfair treatment of black individuals by the police force? No, absolutely not. I still think it's pretty shitty. However, it is important that we take a look at the issue through a realistic lens rather than letting our emotions get in the way. Do I think that black men are more aggressive or dangerous than white men? No, not at all. I think that a lot of it has to do with the culture that they are selling to black youth. The glorification of thug life, gang violence, drugs, objectification of women through rap music is something that a lot of black males are exposed to from a very young age. And what do you think happens when being a thug or being a gangster is being pushed as this ideal lifestyle. And they call that black culture. I call that bullshit. When I think of black culture, things that come to my mind are strong family values, the importance of the family unit, not only that which consists of parents and children, but also grandparents and other relatives, respect for the elders, strong community bonds. As someone who listens to a lot of jazz and blues, I think that African Americans have contributed tremendously to American culture and music. Some of the best genres of music we have right now were invented by black people. Now, those are the things that I think of when I hear of black culture, whereas this whole gangster culture is a trash that they are trying to sell you to replace the culture and the values that you already had from before. It's a manufactured culture that holds only one nefarious purpose, and that purpose is to keep you in the ghetto, it's to keep you down there. It's a form of segregation, and segregation has always existed in America in one form or another, from slavery to white-only spaces, to segregation at school, busing, all that shit. And a new form of segregation is this black culture they are telling you is yours. But what is it about Black Lives Matter that I have such a big personal issue with? Well, let's take a look at their history, goals and ideology. The movement first started back in 2012, after the death of Davon McNeal, but it was in 2016 that they first became very loud and active. At that time, everyone and their grandma knew about the movement. Throughout its whole existence, the movement has always been against police brutality towards black individuals. However, very quickly they formed two main goals that they were trying to achieve. One of them being defunding the police, the other one dismantling the social structures and foundations of America. Now, why would they want to do that? They claim that those structures and foundations are inherently rigged against black individuals. However, their real reasons for that is something else entirely. Have you ever... you get in my way, you bastard! You get in my way, yo. What is coming out of the closet so fucking difficult? Have you ever wondered why the fist on the Black Lives Matter logo is so similar to the fist on the International Socialist and Communist logo? Well, the similarity is not exactly accidental. The three founders of the Black Lives Matter organization have openly admitted that they are indeed Marxists, and have on multiple occasions praised the figures like Karl Marx, Lenin, and even Fidel Castro. Now, Marxism has been viewed in a more favourable light in the last decade or so due to how popularised the ideology is becoming. So, some people's natural reaction would be, well, Marxism really isn't that bad. It's the capitalist pigs that are the real problem. It's funny how Marxists first started gaining the momentum at the beginning of the last decade, around the same time as, you guessed it, the Black Lives Matter movement started. Marxism is a rather flawed ideology. Not only are the claims that the history of mankind is a reflection of the economic struggle of the working class unrealistic, absurd, and straight up ridiculous, but most of all, it holds ideas that are dangerous to our ways of living. Marxism, if openly embraced, is a perfect gateway to socialism. And yes, while you might argue that socialism does not have to equate to communism, just take a look at what's happening in Venezuela right now. The Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, states that this system should be achieved at any cost necessary, which means that the far-left ideologies are embracing both non-violent as well as violent methods, just like Antifa. Now, if you're still asking yourself, what's wrong with socialism? Just take a look at the countries that have implemented socialism: North Korea, China, Cuba. If you like the idea of your freedom of speech being taken away from you, if you like the idea of a government deciding for you what your needs are, if you like the idea of a totalitarian government that controls absolutely everything from your life, means of production and distribution of wealth, be my guest. Do you know what I call that? Slavery. I'm not saying that capitalism is perfect. It's a sure way to become a slave to the wage, but I still think it's the better of two evils. Free market economy is essential for people to support themselves without giving full control to an authoritarian government. And some people like to mention Scandinavian countries as countries that have implemented socialism, and it works. Well, just for the record, Scandinavian countries are not socialistic countries. What you are referring to is social democracy, which is actually a form of capitalism that mixes free market economy with social safety net. In those type of countries, some things are publicly owned and some things are privately owned. I think those are well-balanced countries that certainly are not socialistic. They lied. Black Lives Matter has previously supported the Cuban regime. They aim to destabilize the American society because when it all falls down, they can replace it with socialism. And hey, if capitalism is the source of all our problems, then socialism must be the cure. A cure that very quickly turns into another four-letter C word. A cage. You see, there's a reason why people are fleeing from the socialist countries. And if you know someone who has ever lived in one, please go talk to them. You might learn something. But hey, if America becomes a communist paradise, at least that will fix the immigration issue that some people on the right are so mad about. Everybody wins.
Exactly. Everybody benefits.
Another thing on the Black Lives Matter's list of mischiefs is disrupting the nuclear family. The exact same thing that black communities really need right now. With so many kids growing up without their fathers, it is very important that they go back to the culture that promotes strong family bonds. Instead, the Black Lives Matter's aim is to destroy it. It seems to me that this organization is trying to do everything in their power to make black communities more reliant on the big government. And I mentioned earlier that the government wants African Americans to stay in the ghetto because if they can pull themselves out of that situation, they can no longer use them and manipulate them to achieve their own goals. Racism is such a sensitive topic among so many black people in America that it has become so easy for them to use it against you. Remember this, government is not your friend, they put you in this situation. And Black Lives Matter is not your friend because they want you to stay down there. Another issue I have with going after the family unit is that can quickly lead into a situation where the government is raising our kids for us. I see this idea of communities raising kids instead of parents, and it's being pushed even where I live, even by the people I know. This is really bad. Not only does it encourage irresponsibility towards our own kids, but also opens up for the possibility of parents not being involved in their child's life, which is sort of already happening even within a regular family unit, thanks to those little buggers we call phones. When that is achieved, the government has full power to feed your child any information, any ideas they want. And considering how vulnerable kids are to indoctrination, it is of utmost importance that we do anything in our power to stop it. So, you should ask yourself, is it really that weird that people like me and many others don't support Black Lives Matter? And does that really make us racist? You see, the thing about labeling people who disagree as racists is a sort of a powerful weapon. It's a clever trick. It's a perfect weapon. At this point, it is not sufficient anymore to just not be racist. You have to agree with the mainstream narrative that they're trying to push. You have to support it. Otherwise, you are racist. Yeah, I think most people don't really want to be labeled as racist, so they will agree, they will support, they will try to help, and they don't even realize how much damage they are causing in the process. They don't realize that they are just being used by the radicals and the politicians, and might even end up being indoctrinated in the process. You know what that really is all about? Psychological warfare. It's a method of manipulation, but also a shaming tactic. You are being shamed if you dare to speak your mind, if you dare to say your opinion, if you dare to speak against shitty ideologies. You will not only get shamed, but also silenced and maybe even censored. Do you know where else that happens? In China. It's very obvious to me that they put ideologies above people, and I will never support any movement which does that. Black Lives Matter was responsible for destroying multiple black businesses during the riots of 2020. But they never took any responsibility for that. They never did anything to put those businesses back on their feet, even though they raised millions and millions of dollars and had the opportunity to do so. What do they do instead? Well, they deflect the blame on the far right and the Proud Boys. Yeah, besides, fuck those guys. For all I know, they were involved in this shit show. By the way, what kind of a name is Proud Boys? It sounds like a name you give to your wacky group of friends when you're 7-year-old. Okay, so let's assume that Black Lives Matter is actually innocent here. Even if, why didn't you do anything to help all those black people who were affected financially by everything that has happened last year? Now, it seems to me that Black Lives Matter is a force that only destroys but never creates. You know, black lives don't really matter to Black Lives Matter, but let me tell you what does. Black votes. In the years 2017 to 2019, hundreds of black people were killed by the police, but we weren't seeing an insane amount of protests on the streets. In 2021, the numbers of black people killed by the police reflects the numbers from 2020. Not only does that prove that whatever Black Lives Matter is doing, it's obviously not working, it's not making any significant change, but it also creates a certain pattern that you may have noticed here. The only years in which Black Lives Matter was particularly active and loud were years 2016 and 2020, the election years. Coincidence? I think not, especially considering how in between the election years, Black Lives Matter tend to stick to the shadows. They withdraw back to their caves where they masturbate to Communist Manifesto or worship a statue of Stalin or whatever the fuck it is they're doing. The main goal of the chaos they caused last year was to influence the votes in order to get more people to vote for the Democratic Party and elect Joe Biden by using the front of social justice. And you may say, hey, that's a good thing because the Republicans, oh my god, they are so racist and we needed to get rid of Donald Trump. Look, I'm not a big fan of Trump, personally, but I genuinely don't think that everyone, or even most people on the right wing, are racist. Again, this is the media blowing things out of proportion in order to pit people against each other. By villainizing a whole side of the political spectrum, you are automatically making the other side look like saviors. But let me tell you this, conservatives are not all demons, and liberals are not all racist. Life is a bit more nuanced than that. But what's really sad here is that they used the tragedy that is the death of George Floyd to influence the elections, while the Democratic Party was openly supporting the protests and the riots because it was working in their favor. Derek Chauvin became the scapegoat for their agenda, whereas George Floyd became the sacrificial lamb. And let's ignore the fact that so many other people were killed, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, but it was enough to use just one name to get reaction out of people. And that name happened to be George Floyd. Because it's just like I said, Black Lives Matter cares more about their ideology than they care about black lives. And honestly, I think that using someone's death to further your own agenda is pretty goddamn disgusting. Black lives matter only when it's a white cop who pulls the trigger. If you're black and you live in America, you are way more likely to be killed by another black person than you are to be killed by a white cop. But Black Lives Matter never cared about black on black crime, which is honestly a much bigger issue than police brutality. On July 4th, 2020, an 11-year-old black boy named Davon McNeal was shot in the back of his head during an anti-violence cookout in Washington, D.C. His mother, Crystal McNeal, was the organizer for the whole Stop the Violence event, during which the incident took place. It wasn't a cop who shot this kid. It wasn't a white supremacist. Davon McNeal was an unfortunate victim of gang violence that has been plaguing the community. The gang violence that his family was fighting so hard against. Because this whole family has done so much to minimize the violence. Davon's mother and grandfather were both involved in stopping the violence. They formed a group named Guardian Angels. The job was to interrupt and prevent any possible gang violence in the district. They played the role of the diplomats between the rival gangs. They talked with the criminals in order to stop any potential gun violence from happening. They did everything in their power to keep the kids off the street. You know, it's really sad when the worst things happen to good people. And the way I see it, these people, they are the heroes. Their faces should be on the covers. The world should never forget their names. I never will. They have done so much more for their own community than Black Lives Matter has ever done. You know, people with a heart of gold are so hard to find these days. These people, this family, man, they had a heart of gold. And this whole mess should have never happened because they didn't deserve any of this. Davon McNeal did not deserve to die. So I'm asking you, Black Lives Matter, where were you when that happened? You didn't care. You were too busy vandalizing black businesses, destroying statues, and making sure people vote for Biden. And the media, they told us what to focus on. They told us what matters. And they buried this story under all the bullshit that they are trying to poison our minds with. It was a kid, for fuck's sake. And if you can talk about injustice, then so can I. And if that makes me racist, so be it. I don't care. But you never addressed that. Because that would go against your agenda. Again, that is all you ever cared about. Your agenda, your ideology. No lives matter to you. But you know what's funny? It was the cops who arrested every single person responsible for that murder. The same people you villainize. The same people you want to defund. Hey, you know what? Maybe they're not so bad after all. All I know is that you are much worse. Have you ever wondered where all of the organization's money is going? Black Lives Matter raised $90 million in 2020 alone. There's this one right-wing conspiracy theory, and let's face it, these days, most of the conspiracy theories originate with the right wing, claims that all of the donations done to the Black Lives Matter organization goes directly to the Democratic Party. I think that we should treat it as a conspiracy theory. Nothing more, nothing less. The problem is that some people are trying to sell it like it's facts. It's not a fact. It has never been a fact. But the only solid evidence against those claims is Black Lives Matter's response, in which they denied it. And to be honest, I don't really trust those assholes either. But I'm not going to jump into any conclusions. I'm not going to give in to any conspiracy theories. I'm not here to tell you the truth. I don't have all the answers. I'm just an idiot with a camera and access to the internet, and I'm going to tell you how it is. I don't know. I don't know shit. And I think that is something we should be saying more often, because so many people claim to speak facts. You know, they say facts don't care about your feelings, but all I hear is opinions. So I'm just sitting here thinking, could it be that Black Lives Matter poured the money into Biden's campaign? Could be. I mean, it would definitely work in the favor. But considering that the whole goal for 2020 was to influence the votes, maybe that was enough in and of itself and they didn't really need to push it any further. Problem solved, right? Except that they have been very secretive about all that money, and to this day we still don't really know where it went. One of the founders of the movement bought an expensive mansion, and people were suspecting that, hey, maybe it is the donated money that she used to buy her own house. Could be. Who knows? But I can tell you what I know. Facebook wasn't allowing its users to share this article. And a journalist who posted about it on Twitter got banned from the platform. Nothing suspicious here at all. Don't question this. We might never find out where all that money went, but I can tell you where it definitely didn't go. Into the betterment of African Americans' living situation. But at least we got a campaign called Dear White Parents, because it is so important to educate our kids that they're a white piece of trash just because of the color of the skin. If you're one of those white people who suffer from white guilt, just stop it, okay? It's pathetic. Grow some balls, for fuck's sake. Imagine if all this money went into infrastructure, education, job programs, opportunities, programs that keep young people off the streets and away from all the gangbanging and violence, renovations, affordable housing. Now, just imagine how much change that would have made, and if that was what Black Lives Matter was all about, hey, I would support them. I would even donate money myself. But instead, you chose to make it all about radical political ideologies, and by doing so, you alienated a lot of people who would genuinely want to help, people who would genuinely want to make a difference. And you dare to call them racist white supremacists. Yo, that's kind of fucked up. We're in this together. And I think that lifting up black communities is essential. It's an essential step for ending the division and segregation that has been plaguing America for a long time. But you have to do it yourselves. That requires work and effort. And the government is not going to help you. The Democrats, they're not going to help you. Biden is not going to help you. You're just a pawn in their game. They are using you. You know, fuck the government. Fuck those guys. I believe that there's a lot of people who would love to help you, but you have to reach out to them, not accusing them of oppression or racism. That's not how it works. I mean, what can I say? I think that people should really need to get this shit together. Black, white, straight, gay, left, right, you know. Y'all need to work together because that's the only way to end all this bullshit. Look, I'm totally in favor of private organizations raising money for such causes. I think that will be very beneficial for the genuinely disadvantaged, but it will also be good for economy. Think about it. If more private organizations raise money for similar purposes, then the government's budget can be relocated and used for other purposes and programs without raising the taxes. Everyone would benefit from that, regardless of their skin color.
Everybody benefits.
Of course, my friend.
Skin color is just a facade. It's literally just skin deep. Underneath all that shit, we're all the same. Martin Luther King longed for the day when people judge others not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Yet somehow we're regressing. If you're white, you're racist. If you're black, you're a victim. Let me tell you something about victims. They lie down. Don't lie down. Stand up. Rise up. Politicians and wacko radicalists think that you're naive. They think you're gullible. They think you're a pawn in their goddamn game. Prove them wrong. I'm not here to give you all the answers. I don't claim to speak the truth. I don't want you to think like me. I just want you to think for yourself. I'm just someone who's searching for the truth in a world that is full of lies, deceit, fake news, conspiracies. If you want to join me on my search, welcome home, friend. And remember, black masks matter.